Hi, good evening. Welcome to Spinndle. This is a new business program app amazingness that I have discovered from two fellow teachers. Um, it is, and she wrote out this amazing thing, so I guess I should just read that. I always get tongue-tied. How do you prepare our students for an unknown future? How do we give them the skills to be successful in the workforce when we have no idea what it will look like? These are big, important questions that teachers sometimes ask themselves. But you know what they always ask: how do I keep my students engaged? How do I monitor and mentor them at the same time? Co-founders Jacqueline and Christina asked themselves these very questions. As teachers for 7 years, they lived the day-to-day struggle of trying to keep up with their students by providing truly relevant and meaningful learning experiences that would help them build their skills that they need to be successful in life. So they left the classroom and created Spindle because they knew the answer to the big, important, sometimes questions we first need to help teachers address the daily and always questions. And that's why we're here today. We're here with Christina. She is amazing, and so is Jackie. Jackie's at home with a brand new baby. I have fell in love with their product. I can't wait to share it with you guys. It's going to make such a big difference for me in my classroom, and I know it will make a huge difference for everybody else. So Christina, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura, and hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. As Laura said, my name is Christina Chechos. I am one of the co-founders of Spinndle. And hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time
to sorry, that's me.
Join me today. As Laura said, usually Jackie and I would do this kind of thing together, but I'm happy to be here sharing our story with all of you. As Laura mentioned, we were both teachers for 7 years, and we knew that if the material wasn't meaningful or relevant to our students, we completely lost their attention. We can only imagine how this has been magnified in remote settings. I mean, how can we keep students engaged so schools can maintain some sense of learning pace, right? It's why more and more teachers and even entire schools are turning to student-led projects where kids are ideating solutions or tackling complex real-world problems, addressing big open-ended questions. Jackie and I are big advocates of these projects because, regardless of which of these buzzwords you choose, not only are they engaging, they better align with modern curriculum, and students are building the transferable skills and social skills that today and tomorrow's workforce will need. Which is all great, but we know all too well that this kind of self-paced learning is hard to keep up with. It was hard even when we were physically in the classrooms. For these projects to be successful, we needed to establish an ongoing check-in system so students could get the feedback they needed and we could monitor and mentor that process, and really give them credit where credit is due, valuing the process along the way as opposed to just that final product. But building that system with the tech that was available to us at the time still meant that each student's progress was bottlenecked at us. I was actually explaining this last week to a group of people outside of education. Say my class is working on a community improvement project. Each student has to identify a particular need in the community, come up with a plan to improve it, and then carry out that plan. That's say, 25 kids, roughly, with 25 different ideas in 25 different places all at once, sharing everything with me constantly all the time. It's that, never-ending bombardment of, Mrs. Chechos, what do I do now? Mrs. Chechos, I'm stuck. Mrs. Chechos, do you like this? It was, always apparent to us that our kids relied on us so much. And I'm sure some of you are probably nodding along going, yep, that's my class in a nutshell. And all of that just got to be too much. So Jackie and I quit teaching to address the bigger question. How can we help our students build the skills to learn for themselves? So we started thinking about, the skills that play into our day-to-day work life. As adults, how do we know how to learn how to learn? So we realized that, adults rely on each other. Staff meetings, professional development, stand-up meetings. We collaborate, we run ideas by each other, we co-plan, we seek mentorship when we're stuck. We use each other as resources. We don't go straight to the boss and have everything bottleneck at them. We figure it out. So we decided to kind of apply that to education. We decided to rethink the flow of work in the classroom and built Spinndle. It's an online classroom community for projects where students continuously check in with their peers. They share ideas, drafts, iterations, they give each other feedback. And then the beautiful thing is that teachers get all of these pieces woven together on one dashboard so they can quickly orient themselves to where each student is at. So you're able to monitor and mentor that process for every student. We built Spinndle to meet a classroom need, but now that kids are further removed from their classes, teachers are more in the dark on student progress. Spinndle captures that daily effort and engagement. Now, if you're anything like me, a bit of a skeptic, you might be thinking two things. One is, show me. I just want to see it. I want to see how it works. And two is, okay, well, how do I use it in my classroom? How do I support my students? How does the day-to-day actually function? See, when Jackie and I quit teaching, we thought we'd make lesson plans or, come up with project ideas, maybe even go into curriculum design. We wanted to make a bigger impact, but it always came back to this classroom need. There's a bunch of great project ideas out there. I'm sure teachers like you probably can come up with better ideas than we ever could. Our aim is really to support the how. How do you execute? How does this fit into your classroom? And that's really what I want to focus on for my time with you is, getting to the heart of that how. So without further ado, I'm going to actually jump into Spinndle and I'll demo what the experience is for a student as well as what the experience is for a teacher. So let me pop into a student account. So I'm actually going to sign in with Google. So if you're a Google or a Microsoft school, your students can just use that login information. And once they're in, this is what they'll see. So I'm in Joey's account here. Joey currently has 4 projects on the go. And I'm going to look at that community improvement project that I talked about. So Joey clicks into his project. And actually, the first time that he logs into Spinndle, he will be prompted with his first stage. So you can see that the stages are locked. We actually provide kind of this project map for students to work through. And then Joey has to pick tasks to help him complete each stage. So for example, his community improvement project, he, in stage 1, has to identify a particular need or opportunity in the community, what do you already know, and craft his own driving question. So as you can see here, Joey has attached artifacts to how he's working through this stage. He was given 4 tasks to work through: identifying prior knowledge, doing some informal research, then he identified one problem, and ultimately, came up with his own driving question. So Spinndle provides these tasks already, but they are completely customizable by teachers. The other benefit is that Spinndle provides multiple pathways. So for example, Joey has decided, I want to learn if a tutoring service is going to improve my community. That's his driving question. So when he moves on to his investigate stage, if you haven't already noticed, this follows kind of the standard PBL framework. So in his investigate stage, he's going to gain a better understanding of his topic and do, further deep dive research. So he is given multiple pathways to complete this stage. Joey could have chosen to do an interview, a survey, do an observation, so shadow someone potentially, participate in a group or a club, in order to do research, or just do some generic research. But for his particular project, Joey decided, okay, well, I want to learn if a tutoring service is going to benefit my community. So I want to hear from as many people as possible. Rather than interview everybody at my school, I am going to conduct a survey. So when he adds those tasks, it populates task cards for him to be able to attach artifacts to. And as you can see here, Joey has already attached proof, but he can attach multiple iterations to show how his learning is changing and growing. When he attaches an artifact, he can take a picture, take a video, attach a file, just add some text. He can pull from his Google Drive or his Microsoft OneDrive, depending on your school. And now each time he shares, the other component is to add a caption to explain what he's sharing and what he needs help with. Because as I mentioned, everything on Spinndle gets shared to peers. So anytime Joey posts, his work will show up on a peer feed. So here is actually the space where students are being each other's best resource and learning from each other. Joey can look through everyone's post. He can look and see, this is how Miles is doing some informal research. This is Madison's driving question. This is a place for students to be able to provide feedback to one another. And we know that even that's a skill that needs to be practiced and mentored. What does constructive feedback look like? So in order for Joey to leave a comment, he has to identify to his peer, is it something they did well or something they need to work on? And because we are working with students as young as grade 4, we do have sentence stems provided to really guide that process and teach students how to model constructive feedback. So the idea here for Joey is he can use his peer feed. He doesn't necessarily have to go straight to his teacher to get unstuck. He can get ideas. Even though everyone else in his class is working on their own community improvement project, it's a way for them to connect and get some inspiration. So Joey, when he's ready, can now move on, complete his next task, and even work through the stages much more independently. And for a teacher, what does this look like? Well, when you first log into your account, you get to a page that looks like this, very similar to the student page. Your classrooms will show up on the left-hand sidebar here, so you can have multiple classrooms set up. Right now, Miss Wright is only in charge of this one grade 7 classroom. Let's pop back into that community improvement project. So Miss Wright gets a very quick overview. So this is all of her students' work in the launch stage. So similar to what your students would see, you get a peer feed. We know that to monitor and mentor from afar also means that you might need to mitigate some issues. So if there is anything problematic, you can remove posts from the feed. So you won't delete them, but you can remove them. You can also leave public feedback here in the form of glow and grow comments. So that's a way for you to model what that kind of feedback looks like. And you can also hide any comments that are problematic as well. Now, the best part about this is your dashboard. So clicking into my dashboard, I get a quick overview of where all of my students are at. So for example, Miles and Joey have moved into stage 2 already. I want to know how Joey's doing, I can click into Joey's work and carousel through all of his ideas. This is also a place I can give him private feedback as well and see how he's interacting with his peers. So the idea here is really to give you that quick insight into how your students are doing. And to get started, and this is what I'll talk about a little bit more, Spinndle really facilitates any student-led project. So this is our generic project creation form, and teachers can pull from our framework library as a place to start building their project. So I can search by grade 3 or 6 or grade 7 to 12, and I get standard frameworks for typical student-led projects: PBL, Passion Project, CAPSTONE, Design Thinking. Each of these frameworks comes with stages, again, completely customizable, and each of these stages comes with suggested tasks already. So as a teacher, you have something to plug and play around with. You've got everything built out for you already. It's just up to you to make minor tweaks for your specific students and your specific needs. So right now, we are working with teachers like us who have kind of been those guides on the side for years, struggling to establish an effective check-in system. And Spinndle really is that perfect check-in system. 85% of students say it keeps them organized, gives them a plan so it helps them stay on track. 92% of students find it helpful for understanding how to improve their work, so they're able to move forward independently. This is why the majority of our student users in remote and hybrid settings feel more confident working on their own. Let me take you through an example to further illustrate how we build this confidence in students. Now, throughout the presentation, you will notice a small purple tab in the top left corner that says free resource. So these are resources that we've provided, that they are available for free on our website to facilitate projects. So the first of which is our project planner. It's how we recommend teachers break down a project into manageable chunks for their students. It's also modeled after Spinndle. So let's go through an example of a project. Say I have this idea, my focus is language arts. I'm going to call it Project Right or Wrong. I've organized with my local newspaper to feature my students' final work on their website. So I now have a way for my students to showcase their work. My driving question for this project is, how can you use journalism to improve on a current affair in your community? And I'm asking my students to investigate an issue and solve that issue or draw attention to it through journalism. So they'll have to publish one piece, still gives them choice. It's open-ended. They could do a news broadcast, a documentary, an article series. So I have my project. Most of the time, this part of the planning process isn't very challenging for teachers. This is also probably what you'd be able to find if you Googled project ideas. The big question is the how. How do I support my students as they do this project? The key is they need a framework. They need a map that shows them the major destinations to hit, but doesn't dictate exactly how to get there. So I'm going to take you through our current framework library to show how our frameworks can support all kinds of student-led projects. And then if there's any questions about Spinndle in general, I can field those questions, so you can plop them in the chat. So picking the right framework is important, so your students are scaffolded the way you want them to be. So first, it's important to consider, what do you want your students to do? What are your goals? So for my journalism project, I want my students to carry out a plan of action around a real community issue. So the PBL framework really works best for me in that case. And this is where we've broken down a lot of the buzzwords. See, if I wanted my students to investigate an issue and then provide an active service to the community around that issue, I would have picked the service learning framework. Or if I wanted my kids to just explore a community issue and then showcase their learning in a publication, so no plan of action, then I might have chosen an inquiry framework instead. So we help teachers scaffold their students specific to the goals of the project. We also have a number of frameworks tailored more to specific grades. So now all I need to do as a teacher is tweak this framework to meet my needs. So for example, with our project Right or Wrong, my kids can't do an investigation through participation because of COVID. And because it's an ELA focus, I want to remove performance as an option for presenting their work. I really want it to be kind of text focused. So now say, I don't know, we have a kid, Xander, working on this project. He has this framework to move through. So Xander might, in his launch stage, identify a problem and decide, I want to look at how businesses have survived COVID-19. So that becomes his driving question. That becomes his motivation for the project. In his investigate stage, he decides, I want to interview a few local businesses. And then in his plan and act stage, maybe his publication is something around how to keep your business going during a pandemic. 5 easy steps. Our passion project framework. If you've ever heard of Genius Hour or 20 Time, where you set aside a chunk of time each week for your students to pursue something out of interest or showcase what they've learned, this is a great framework to keep them on track and accountable for turning their passion into something more purposeful. So students start by, picking a hobby or an interest, something that they're interested in pursuing, and then turn in a formal or informal proposal on how they intend to act on their passions. This will help guide how they, become an expert, build that expertise on their topic in order to come up with a product to showcase. We actually have 2 inquiry frameworks. Inquiry is generally a deep dive into a topic. It's learning for learning's sake. So our free inquiry model, if we had the question, let's say, how has human experience changed over the last 100 years? Students have the option in a free inquiry to explore, anything they want really, from sports to music to technology. They can track, that human experience over 100 years. So they would do their own exploration, clarify exactly what their topic is, do their investigation, come up with a way to showcase their learning, and ultimately do a final reflection of the entire project. Whereas a guided inquiry might be for a more specific piece of content. So let's say our driving question is, why were Egyptians so influential? So as a class in our first stage, prior knowledge, we share that knowledge, we identify gaps, we figure out everything we know about Egyptian civilization, and then each student can decide, what they want to look at in terms of why they were so influential. So Xander might decide, I want to look at Egyptian technology. Joey might decide, I want to look at Egyptian religion. And then they can make a more personal connection and create an authentic piece out of that. Our design thinking framework is great for projects where students are ideating solutions. So for a project like, how can we make our school more accessible? You might be familiar with the Stanford design process. That's what we've modeled this after. It's a great way to take students through empathizing with their users or a particular audience, then defining a problem or an opportunity, ideating solutions, creating a prototype, and testing that prototype. So Spinndle is really helpful for such an iterative process because it actually outlines the linear aspect of it. If a student's prototype isn't working out, they can go back to the ideate stage and they'll have all of the tasks laid out for them. They're all equally supported no matter where they are in their process. And we provided students with different strategies for how to discover opportunities and turn them into solutions. Our ELA framework engages students in a particular language component, so a topic, a style, a theme. So for this example, spoken word poetry. So students would be immersed in different kinds of spoken word poetry, then analyze the characteristics of strong spoken word poetry, start to use those characteristics in their own writing and synthesize it, and ultimately compose their own piece. We have an entrepreneur framework that's designed to move students through the stages of creating a business from scratch or improving on an existing business. This is a great framework to use for a math project, let's say. Students start by identifying an opportunity, then they're challenged to empathize with their customers in order to come up with a possible product or solution. So again, that design thinking process. Once they've engaged in that creative problem solving, students must put together a plan to pitch their business. So they think about cost drivers, appropriate business models, and selling and marketing strategies. TED Talk. So you could get your kids to do a TED Talk, focus on public speaking skills. So this is an opportunity to get your students to put their own spin on a topic they're interested in, or get the audience to think about something in a new light. Students have to think about public speaking and speech writing strategies, along the way. One of our other frameworks is CAPSTONE. So this is, great for seniors, but can be adapted to any kind of large culminating project, like a year-end or a careers-focused project. Students could choose a topic or industry that they're interested in, create a proposal for why it's meaningful for them, do research, maybe have them write a paper on it, and produce something to showcase or to add to their portfolio. Our scientific problem-solving framework has been popular because it takes kids through the scientific thinking process, generating hypothesis, testing that hypothesis by doing an experiment or building a model in order to draw conclusions. So rather than having, your kids go straight to Google and look up what affects plant growth, they actually have to go through the scientific reasoning steps. And we have a mini project framework. So this we often recommend for younger students who are still learning the fundamentals of doing a project, or for short projects you just want to add some structure to. So for example, when I taught elementary, in September, I always had my kids do an Introducing Me project. So I'd show them this video from a Disney movie where Nick Jonas, a musician, sings a song about himself to introduce himself to a girl. So my students' project was to come up with a creative way to introduce yourself that also highlights something about yourself. One of my favorite projects was actually this boy in grade 5 who did a live cooking demonstration, made scrambled eggs, but used the ingredients to tell us bits about himself, like I threw in Tabasco because it's spicy and I've got a little bit of a temper. I picked scrambled eggs because I'm a really messy kid. So just little things like that. So having a framework and tasks will help students like Xander move through their projects in chunks, and so that they don't miss any important steps along the way. Yes, all of our frameworks come with prescribed tasks, but you can also build your own specific tasks to better customize or differentiate for your students. So before I continue, just wanted to check in with Lara and see if there's any burning questions.
Christina, there's one that I don't know the answer to. They're asking if you can use an immersive reader for the kiddos.
So at this time, we don't have immersive reader built into Spinndle, the platform itself, but if your browser is already using a tool like that, then it should be able to do
it. Okay, Mel, help me out. Can they listen to things, you mean like listen to some of the directions on the task cards?
So again, we don't have that built into the platform itself. It might just depend on the actual feature that you have on your computer, I would say.
So Spindle does not have like the articles and the resources inside it. It's like the organization for those resources.
Yes. There are a few frameworks that come with links. So for example, our TED Talk, the first stage, I believe, is something around observe other TED Talks. So there are 4 or 5 TED Talks that are already linked on that first stage. Beyond that, we don't have specific resources attached to the stages themselves yet.
Oh, you know what would be good is a template to teach the kids to help to teach the kids to find their own resources. That would be really,
Could be.
yeah.
My mind is buzzing now.
Thinking out loud now, yeah. Sorry.
No problem.
Other than that, I think everybody's real quiet. I think they're taking it in and trying to see how it looks in real time it is. And even for me, it was like, okay, I need a minute to like digest this.
Yeah. Well, kind of jumping off on that point, let's kind of focus on those resources, because, I'm sure some of you have been thinking what Jackie and I have also been thinking is, my kids might not be able to even use this framework by themselves yet. Yes, for a lot of them, it might not be enough because there are so many executive functioning skills involved with working independently and remotely. So we know teachers are carving out time right now to teach students strategies for how to set goals and prioritize tasks, schedule, manage time, self-monitor. Before COVID, attendance and, some participation in class was our measure of whether or not a kid, quote unquote, showed up to school that day. But now in remote or, hybrid environments, showing up is something entirely different. It's students being able to provide evidence of their effort and learning. And, in order to do that, they need these foundational skills. The frameworks are Spindle's foundation. So as Laura mentioned in the beginning, we founded our company just last year. So as we grow, we want to build in scaffolds for these executive functioning skills as well. Until then, we have a number of free resources that our users have found very helpful. Resources to scaffold higher order skills that student-led projects require. So one of these skills is managing time, and backwards planning is a great way to teach our students how to do this. So for example, if we kind of revisit Xander's project, say his teacher wants him to hand in research findings for his investigate stage. I want to see, proof of your research. Xander has set a milestone for himself that, okay, well, I want to interview, 5 local businesses to see how they're surviving COVID. So he decides once he's done that, he's kind of met that milestone. Well, in order to complete 5 interviews, Xander needs to develop, a method of documenting or recording those interviews. In order to document his findings, he would first need to create, interview questions in order to do his interview. Before he can create those questions, he's got to schedule his interviews so he can actually ask his questions. Before he schedules his interviews, he has to contact his potential interviewees. And before contacting those people, he's got to find 5 local businesses to interview. So once Xander has broken down this one milestone into manageable tasks, he'll have a much easier time making assumptions about the time it will take to accomplish each task. So now he can add up the times and determine how long it'll take him to complete just this one milestone. So, remember, these are assumptions. It's a great opportunity to practice and reflect on time management and rational goal setting. So this is one of the resources that you can find on our website. And paired with our project planner, Xander can repeat this process for all of the deliverables that his teacher wants. And he can put it all together and clearly see how much time it's going to take to accomplish each milestone, and in what order he needs to work on each task. We've also included resources for a number of those common project tasks. So for example, a SMART goal resource. So this is great at the start of your project, or maybe part of a project proposal, getting students to really think through what their goal is going to be. Coming up with a driving question is also something that is expected in a lot of these projects. Some of you may be familiar with the Right Question Institute's format for creating a driving question. We followed that structure and created a resource for students to be walked through those steps of how to develop a good open-ended driving question. Another thing students struggle with is coming up with a final product. So we have resources to support that. For example, first identifying who your target audience is will help you figure out what kind of product you should make. And we have resources to support reflection, to either monitor progress or evaluate, the entire journey. So all of our resources are available as make a copy links, so you can tweak them and customize them to your particular needs. They come as Google slide presentations with text boxes students can fill in, or you can remove those text boxes and print it out and use it as a physical paper resource. They're already sized to 8.5 by 11, so making it easy for you to just plug and play with. So we've gone through kind of big picture, how do I break this down to resources to scaffold specific tasks. The other key component to successful projects is pacing. And often this is something that we teachers take charge of. It's, we assign the due dates, we check in to see if our kids are on track. How can we help students begin to develop self-monitoring skills for themselves? Lots of companies rely on scheduling or charts or progress boards to ensure that they're keeping up with their plans. So we figured, why don't we make those tools available to students too? For example, you could have your class use a Gantt chart. So, for Xander's project, he could print this or share this with teachers or, his group members or his parents as a way to hold himself accountable to the goal that he set at the beginning of his project. If for whatever reason he doesn't meet his goal or manage his time appropriately, this chart is a great way for him to reflect and learn for next time. It's also a great way for him to kind of look and be like, okay, well, according to this, September 17th to September 19th are looking pretty busy. I've got, 3 different milestones that I'm working on there. So it's a way for him to be able to adjust and plan accordingly. As a teacher, you could set the overall time frame. You could, assign this Gantt chart and just say, this is the pacing that I expect or that I would, imagine for you. It's just a helpful way to, map out that project in its entirety. If students are working on groups, they could share a digital Scrum board with their group members to update each other on where they are on their tasks. Again, holding each other accountable for process. This is something that you could also get your students to use independently. So it's just a nice way to check in. Again, it's a Google slide. You can just have your students share it with you. It's a quick reference for you to see where they're at. And often for younger students, the calendar visual is still really helpful. And maybe Google Calendar is not, the most kid-friendly tool to use quite yet. So by using just a visual calendar like this, you could plug in all your milestones here, or you can work together as a class and create a project calendar and have that accessible to all of your students. So these resources and more are available on our website. Feel free to check them out and download your own copies. So as I mentioned, we founded the company last year and have launched our beta version of Spinndle just this last month, August. Established a teacher advisory board, so we've got 25 innovative teachers from across North America that are consistently helping us with product testing. so we can polish out the product even more. We now have these and a number of other schools coming on board to pilot Spinndle, so we can, build out a school model. What does school analytics look like? What do teachers, in the same building want to be able to do with Spinndle? And we're working with 2 universities as a teacher training tool. So they actually sought us out because they were looking for a way to better instruct their pre-service teachers on what formative assessment should look like. So that's, another partnership that we're really proud about. And these are our goals for this year. So we're looking for the right kind of early adopters, the ones that are going to help us take Spinndle to the next level. We're growing our knowledge base and our community so we can better support our teachers and our users. We're, coming up with other ideas for resources and how those can facilitate the projects that you're running. And, of course, our biggest goal of all is to continue to help students become more independent. And so if you would like to help us meet our goals and be part of our vision, here are 3 ways you can get involved: licensing, school pilots, and teacher trials. So for licensing, if you just want to try it for the year, this is what a license would cost. So as mentioned, we are a beta product, so pricing reflects that. We'll continue to be making upgrades to the platform as the year goes by. If your school is not ready to commit to a license, then maybe you're interested in trying a school pilot. So we work with teachers, anywhere from 3 to 6 teachers, to run a school pilot. Usually it's 1 to 3 months. We're really treating this as a partnership opportunity, using it as a way for us to learn about what your school needs are, and a way for you to test out something before you commit. And next month, we are running our first free trial campaign for teachers. So this is something that is, we're just announcing today. You are actually the first group of people that we are putting this out to. So technically you have first dibs. I would recommend you have your phones ready, because I'll put up a QR code at the end of this presentation for you to be able to register if you're interested. So in order to participate, you have to attend a training session on September 29th. This covers account setup, classroom setup, project setup, basic navigation of the platform. So we do require this because we don't have kind of a guided walkthrough built into the platform yet. So we don't want any of you to be lost. We want you to know where you're going. So that is the one requirement. We are also offering an optional project planning workshop on the 30th. So this is good if you're kind of, new to these kinds of projects or not sure how to break down your project. You might have an idea already. So that project planner template that I showed you at the very beginning, we'll actually take that journalism example and do the actual breakdown so you can envision how you might break down your own project on Spinndle. And that's meant to be more of a workshop. So if you have specific questions, that will be more interactive. So again, training session's mandatory, planning session is not. And then October 1st, you'll get your sign up and you get to use Spinndle for free for October. On behalf of Jackie and myself, I just want to say thank you for your time spending the evening with us. We're excited to be connecting. We've heard nothing but great things from Laura about this community, so we do look forward to being able to collaborate and work in partnership with a lot of you. If you are interested in that October trial, here is that QR code. There's your sign up. And if you have any questions, now's the time, I guess.
Thank you so much, Christina. I can't tell you guys how amazing this has been just since I've been connected to Christina and Jackie. I can ask them a question and I get almost immediate feedback and help and assistance. And it's really nice to have people that are teachers that have been where we are and that want to not only help students, but also help teachers and do something better for our future generations. It's been completely amazing. I hope that you guys give it a really close look. You have Christina's email and her Twitter account. You can always ask me too. I'd be glad to show you what. Can I show them what my kids are doing, Christina?
Yeah, no problem on our end as long as you're allowed to.
Oh yeah, I'm allowed to do that. But and I have 6th graders using it and 7th graders, and my 6th graders are still pretty much babies. They're like, 5th graders still. And it's just seeing with just the free resources that Christina and Jackie have provided, the ability that it's allowed my kids to take to the next level has been miraculous. So I'm enthralled. So any more questions out there? Are you guys still just taking it in? Okay, I think with that, Mel, you want to take us off, or I don't remember how to do that. I'm sorry, sweetie. I will say good night. Thank you all for staying with us, and spread the word.